Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Living the Lost podcast. Today I'm joined by Poet RS, someone I was incredibly inspired by. I met him on a poetry night and just was blown away by your performance and your words. So thank you for joining us here today, mate.
Appreciate it, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so it's quite a setup as we've
I like the setup.
Yeah, it's alright, isn't it?
It's the crystals are doing it for me. The crystals.
Appreciate that, yeah. You've got to appreciate the crystals. It's a little touch that make all the difference. Also, I've been told that I've got to plug the merch. Merch is out, but we can talk about that another day. But so like, one of the things that, Living Lost is all about is sharing stories, coming on and just, discussing inherently difficult topics, which we're trying to, create that normalized narrative. And when we had that, interaction, when I saw your poetry, I was, as I said, incredibly moved by not only your words, but your story. And I think it's something, people should hear and kind of hear it from you. So just, I guess, like start from who you are and, we can just go into...
Yeah. Well, it's my poetry journey has just been a bit crazy. I can't lie to you. Like in a positive way. Like I started writing poetry and performing in November 2019.
Yeah.
And I did like maybe 4 shows and then lockdown hit. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is life. But it allowed me time to really understand myself and understand my poetry. And I was writing like 2-3 poems a week.
Yeah.
But before that, my interaction with poetry was like next to zero. Like I'm a school teacher, so it was all about school life. I'm a single dad with 3 kids, so it was all about my kids' life. And like that was it. I just bounced between the two. And I had a lot of trauma. Like I went to therapy, which was good. Like I used to knock therapy for years and I would actually suppress my emotions. But then when I went to therapy, the first 2 sessions I was a bit like, I don't want to be here. Because I was still quite stigmatized.
Yeah.
But then when I had to really like look within myself and say, well, why am I coming here? Like, this is a waste of an hour if you're not going to talk. Yeah. And I opened up. I started talking and I realized that there's power in talking. There's power in words. And my therapist said to journal, she said to write things down. And I was like, okay, cool. So I only would write down my feelings. And that was for a couple months. Yeah. And then I decided I was going to write a poem. And I wrote one. And I was like, whoa, this is crap. I like threw it in the bin.
Never to be seen again.
I was like,
yeah, we've all been there, mate. We've been there.
I threw it in the bin, and then I decided I didn't really decide to write poetry. After that, I was writing about my experience with the N-word. Yeah. My son had a bit of experience in school with it for the first time, and he didn't really understand it. So I was explaining to him what, like the origins of the word, and we were looking at like pre-colonized Africa and things like that. And then something came over me, like an inspiration, a field came over me. I decided to write about the N-word. Yeah. And then I showed it to my friend at school who's an English teacher. And he was like, oh, you should go on stage and speak about this. So I was like, all right, cool. So that half term, I just typed into Google poetry events in London. And the first one that came up was Flow Vortex. Okay. So I didn't know what I was doing. I just clicked on their website. I was like, I'll apply. Yeah. Sent them a poem. They said, cool, come. And then I came. And I didn't realize that Flow Vortex is like one of the biggest poetry events in London. There's like 150 people there. Oh, wow. And I was like, crap. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm like sweating on stage. Like people are coming onto the stage and just dropping crazy fire. Yeah. And I'm just there like, I have one poem in my whole arsenal.
In your locker.
Yeah, like you guys have got like years of material. I'm coming with the one thing I've ever written. But they liked it. Yeah. Like the crowd liked it, and that was the start of my poetry journey. Whereas before that, it was like trying to understand who I was. It was my trauma, it was my stresses. Like I lost my mum at 14 and then my dad walked out like literally the day after. I didn't see my dad until I was maybe like 18, 19, something like that. and even actually no, that's a lie. Maybe like in early 20s. So I was like living by myself for so long. So it was like survival was really my only attribute,
Yeah.
and I was bloody good at it because I had to be. So writing poetry made me unlock a lot of the emotions that I was suppressing.
Yeah.
And it made me understand certain things about me. And I'm still trying to understand more about me. Like I generally thought I was finished until about like maybe 2 weeks ago. And I was like, yeah, there's still a lot.
You're getting started, boy. Like this is a journey, do you know what I mean?
Me. So like it's funny when I meet people and when I do headlines and stuff, because they just assume that I've been writing poetry for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nah, it's only been like 2 years.
Yeah.
And they're really shocked by it. But I think it's not, people get caught up on the time scale.
Yeah.
Whereas it's what you do within the time that really counts.
For sure.
I
think, so one of the things about, I mean, I do want to talk about, your mum and that. But one of the things about the poetry that I find particularly interesting is I never wrote. In school I had a more maths related brain. I was quite, I don't want to say dyslexic, but I was on the borderline. Like I probably had a dyslexic test, and I remember the woman was like, if dyslexia's here and you're just there, but fuck you. But
I hate stuff like that. It's like when they say on a scale of 1 to 10, like,
yeah,
how upsetting.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
well, I don't really know what a 7 is.
Yeah, like what does that mean?
Yeah. But anyway, like in school, I'd never really related to English, and I found it a hard subject to just gauge with. And then obviously I lost mum, and I don't want to say I ever wrote poetry, because I never did, but I would always, maybe if that was a topic that within the classroom, I think I would particularly engage with that as opposed to other areas. But as soon as I think I was faced with that element of trauma, it kind of unlocked something in me. Like life and everyone's poetry journey is very different.
Yeah.
But I think finding art in pain, there's definitely a connection there. And having that element in my life and having to deal with that, kind of unlocked this side in my brain. Like I had these thoughts and I was thinking all these things, and I was like, this is mad. Like I'm having, I'm like, how can one have all of this going on in their head? And like, it's destabilizing. And then, I'm like, I need to get it out. And like, some people might do that through sport. Some people might be aggressive and, kind of release their trauma in that manner. And for me, it was just writing. I had to, as soon as I started, I was like, mate, I enjoy this. And the first piece that I wrote, it took me 3 or 4 months to do.
Wow.
Yeah, and it took me a long time. I think at the time, because I hadn't written anything before, like I wanted that sense of perfection. And now I know, like with poetry, it doesn't need to be perfect. Yeah. But at the time, I wanted it to be perfect. And, I think from that pain, I did, it has given me definitely this voice. And so like you said about the timing, timing means nothing. As soon as you have that something that gives you that drive, gives you that direction, then yeah. And so that's kind of why I particularly vibe with poetry,
Well, like you were saying, I feel that art and pain coincide with each other, kind of like yin and yang.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in artistic expressions like painting, music, poetry, like just, like sketching, there's so much power in those artistic expressions that you really, really, really tapping into your spiritual.
Yeah.
Like you're still conscious of what's going on and you're like, okay, I'm going to write down some stuff today, this, that, and the other. But you're tapping into your spiritual. And I've always believed that like with inspiration, like it comes from something and it comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
And it gets channeled through you. And then you release that inspiration through whatever medium that you're doing, right? So obviously we're doing it through poetry. So when I'm sitting down and I'm like, okay, I want to write something, because I'm consciously doing that, I don't really tend to write anything.
Yeah.
But I could be like washing the dishes, or actually one time I was in the shower.
I'll tell you what, shower thoughts for me
Shower thoughts are the best.
best.
They're the best. I was in the shower and I was literally like just rhyming,
Yeah.
like out loud. And I was like, crap. Ran out the shower and got my phone and started typing it in my phone quick, dashed the phone back in the shower.
Soap still out.
Yeah, dude, I was soaps everywhere because I was going to be late for work. And I was like, I have to get this, I have to write this down somewhere. I couldn't find no pen anywhere. I just grabbed my phone quick because like something's channeling through you.
Yeah.
And you're expressing that. Like, if you let that go, like, that's that inspiration, that's that channel done, it's finished. Like, you don't know when it's going to come back. Like, it will come back. We don't know when it's going to come back. And I feel for me, like, with poetry, like, I've always been good with words. I've never been good at English. I've always been good with words.
Yeah.
But I never used that to the abilities I'm using now.
Yeah.
Like, for you at school, it was maths. For me at school, it was art.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to. I had no interest in history. I fell asleep on all my history lessons.
Yeah.
Geography, like the teacher went missing. She just hid at the back eating biscuits all day. Like my maths teacher was a tyrant.
Yeah.
Like my English teacher, he was cool, but he was a bit like laid back and lazy.
Yeah.
So I never connected with anyone. But my art teacher was the one. Like he was the one. And I've been like, my mum was artistic. I'm artistic. So I've already got that connection. And I used the art route mainly. Like I was painting, sculpture, photography, like art installations. But then when I had my kids, it was like, well, a canvas is expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I buy paint or do I buy milk? Like, you know, like, do I buy canvas? Do I buy nappies? Like,
Yeah.
So I left it to the side, and then I had like a very turbulent relationship. And then the poetry journey happened after I broke up with their mum.
Yeah.
And like, okay, it's cheap to write poetry, but I find that it hits me deeper now than the artwork has. And it's not to knock artwork, it's just my own personal like thoughts and feelings within that moment.
Yeah.
You know, and now I'm at a stage where I'm like, I'm inspiring people.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know people.
Yeah.
I'm inspiring them.
Yeah.
And like, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And you're causing this chain of inspiration and this positivity, which a lot of the systems that we live in don't do that.
Okay.
So when you're like channeling all this positivity and you're inspiring people so much, like for me it's a blessing. Like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Interesting. Yeah. I think definitely that sense of like a ripple effect almost in what you're talking about, because one of the things, you know, I definitely noticed is doing something inherently positive, whether it is poetry or podcast or whatever you do, you know, people see that, and like you said, people you don't know and think, wow, this is moving, and it kind of fuels something in them. And, you know, that's, you know, it's not the reason why, you know, for example, I didn't start this my initial goal wasn't to inspire those who watch. It was, you know, to have interactions with people in a similar situation. But then as you progress, you're realizing you are helping people in ways you could never have imagined. And I think that's something so beautiful about art. And another thing, what I find particularly powerful about poetry is the sense of performance. And, you know, I'm not an artiste, so I don't know drawing. I couldn't, you know, to be honest, like, look at my handwriting, like, dead, like.
Handwriting is a myth.
Mate, honestly, I had a handwriting tutor. It was that bad.
Really?
Yeah, like, it was so embarrassing. I remember being in school, and I must have been 14 or 15. You know, at that point, you're like trying to be, like, you know, you're trying to be a bit cool, whatever. And my mum had a word with my English teacher at the time, saying like, yeah, you know, what can we do with Joe? Like, his handwriting's terrible. Like, can we find something or whatever? So this woman, my English teacher at the time, I've never been more embarrassed in my life. So in front of the whole class, like, you know, I'm 15, like, you know, chatting to the girls, like trying to flirt or whatever, as a 15-year-old. She comes up to me and hands me this. She goes, "Oh, Joe, I had a chat with your mum. here's the handwriting book that she recommended. But like, it wasn't like just a handwriting book. It was like A, B,
God.
C, and like everyone in the class was absolutely dying. I was
mate.
going so red because it was just like, this was like, you know, when you're like 5 years old learning to write. That's what she gave me, and everyone was like, what is this? I was like, thanks, mum.
Wow.
But yeah, handwriting's a myth, but.
I would have died inside.
Yeah, that's why I'm traumatized. That's why I do this.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's those things, but yeah. So I do want to hear a bit about how you know, your relationship with your mom and how did that affect you and kind of
my
your
mum
journey.
was my rock, man.
Yeah.
Like, she was my rock. Do you know what I mean? And like, so she died from cancer. She actually developed 3 types of cancer in the end, but it was mainly breast cancer. So I found out I think I was 8 years old. I found out she had cancer.
Okay.
I don't know what cancer is at the age of 8 years old. I'm just like, okay, that's a word I've never heard before. And then they were like, oh, you know, it's not terminal. And I'm like, terminal? Airplanes? What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? So my dad sat me down and was like, okay, look, so your mom's got cancer, but we're going to get through this. So I'm just like, cool, whatever. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're 8 years old.
Like,
Why would you know?
I'm 8. Like,
What were you getting through?
I'm like, I was watching Power Rangers,
Yeah.
and now you're telling me like, there's no dots connecting here. So I was very ignorant to it. Right? But over the years, I saw the progression of my mum, and I saw how much she deteriorated, and I was like, okay, like, this cancer thing sounds kind of deep. So I actually asked my auntie, and she told me what it was, and I was in tears. Because the way she explained it was like, your mum is going to die, like, whether you like it or not. So I was like, okay, this is a bit mad. So I spoke to my mum about it, and she just kind of explained it in like a very nice way, like, you know, like, it's not everybody that dies, you can survive, this, that, and the other, we're working through things. So it didn't put my mind at ease, but it made me understand the 2 sides to cancer.
Yeah.
So I got to the age of 12, and I was pretty much my mum's carer. Like, I was looking after my mum. You know, like, where we lived, like, we had kind of like a house similar to this, and we like, there was a shed that was next to the dining room. We had a shed next to the dining room. So we broke down the wall, gutted out the whole shed, and turned that into a bathroom, so a shower, toilet, sink.
Yeah.
Because my mum couldn't get up the stairs,
Yeah.
like, after a while. So, you know, like, we had like the hospital bed in the living room. You know, we had like the bedpan, and, you know, like a kind of like a Zimmer frame that had like a seat with like a bedpan underneath. And I would help her out. Like, I'd miss school days, and I'd help
How old
her
were you
out.
at this point? 12, you
I was
said?
12,
Okay,
yeah. So this was between 12 and like 14. You know, it's like, I'd skip school, like, just to help her out. And like, my school, I believed my school knew my mum had cancer because my dad told them, but the extent of what was going on, like, they had no idea. Like, to them, I was just a kid that missed school a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and I wasn't exactly like trying to talk to people.
Yeah.
And when I'd get into school, I mean, I was a bit of a dick. I can't.
Yeah.
Like,
But you had every right to be because of what you were going through, and you didn't.
Yes and no. Like, sometimes I'll just be a dick because I know I can get away with it.
Yeah.
And then, like, other times I was like fighting stuff that I didn't even realize I was fighting at the time. You know. So, and then when it got to 14, my mom passed away at 14. And then we was in the hospital, and like, my aunties were there, like, my mum's sons, my 2 brothers were there, you know, and I knew what was going on, but because I'd been holding on and been strong for so long, I felt like I had to be strong for everybody else.
Yeah.
So I still wasn't dealing with my feelings at all.
Yeah.
Like, not in the slightest. Like, even times when my mum was like, go to school, and I'm like, no, I'm going to look after you. She's like, go to school. Like, you need to get your education.
Yeah.
I'm like, forget school. Like, I need to look after you. I'm like, what if you dropped? She's like, I'll get up. And I'm like, with who?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, we would have like those type of arguments because she was stubborn. She was stubborn. And
Yeah.
I'm stubborn as well. Like, I get it from her. But yeah, I felt like I had to be strong for everyone. So I didn't cry, you know, I didn't really bat an eyelid. I like, you know, my aunties, my uncles and everyone was there, and they're like, "Are you all right? You fine? You want a drink?" I'm like, "No, I'm cool." Like, and I'm running around saying, "Do you want a drink? Do you want this? Do you want that?" They're just like, "Be here for your mum." I'm like, "I am here,"
Yeah.
but in some ways I wasn't there. So I had to. I broke. Like I broke.
Yeah.
And my house wasn't too far. Like it was literally walking distance from the hospital, like 2
Yeah.
minutes. So I went home. I caught my breath. My dad came, and then my auntie called my dad and said that my mum passed away.
Yeah.
So we like ran back to the hospital, and it was at that moment every single emotion that I suppressed for those how many years just came out at once.
Yeah.
And it all came out with like tears, sadness, anger. I remember talking to the nurse and being like, "I need a defibrillator."
Yeah.
I couldn't really say that word properly.
Yeah.
I was like, defibrillator. She's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "The shocky thing." She's like, "What? I'm like, this one." I was just fucking getting out. Like, I was going mad. Like,
Yeah.
I ended up having a fight with like the security guards. Like, had a fight with the nurse. Like I was like over my mom's body crying, and then one of my adopted brother, he just like picked me up. He like just scooped me with one arm, like I was throwing chairs everywhere. And then security wanted to kick me out. And they explained to them what happened, and they said, "Okay, like I get it now." And they're like, "Look, he's 14," but they thought I was like 18 because I was like a big kid.
Yeah.
So like there was that, and then the next day my dad was just like, "Yeah."
Quickly, because you know you said you looked a lot older.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why you had that sense of maturity? Because you thought...
Nah, not at all. I had the sense of maturity because I had to act a certain way that allowed me to look after my mum.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be childish and look after someone that's dying. Like,
No, of course not.
It doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. So I, in a sense, made a subconscious decision to just strip away my childhood in order to try to help my mum. You know, so I mean, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just like, right, this is what I need to do, so I got to do it. So I think that's why I was a bit more mature.
And why did you think it was your why did you take that upon yourself?
Because it was my mum.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's my mum. Like,
Yeah.
do anything for my mum.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that's why I did it. And then like I remember, you know, she passed away, and she passed away the day after her birthday. So we had like all happy birthday balloons and flowers and fruit bowls and that. So I remember taking like the balloons and the fruit bowls and walking it back to my house, and I put it in the living room, and then I went to bed.
Yeah.
I just went to sleep. Like I was so exhausted. I went to sleep. Next day I woke up, and I remember vividly I woke up and I was like, "Mom,
Yeah.
is there breakfast?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Mom," and I'm like, "Why is this woman not talking for?" Like, I was like that. I went downstairs and I was just like, "Oh yeah,
She's gone.
she's gone." And then I saw my dad, and he was like, "Oh, I'm just going to." He goes, I'm going on a business trip, so I'm not gonna be back for a few weeks." And I never saw him. He just left. Like he just bounced, and I was like, "Well, okay." So from then I just decided, well, I could either just not be here, or I could actually like try to live a life of something. So it was all survival. Like I was in my parents' home. Like I had to look after my like my uncle. I was on the run from like social services. And then my uncle came randomly knocking on my door, my dad's brother, and he's like, "I'm gonna look after you now."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Why? It's been a year."
Yeah.
So I don't know who told him or how he found out I was just there, but he came. It ended up I was looking after him. Like he was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know, ended up I was looking after him. My dad's child from a previous relationship randomly turned up on my doorstep. I ended up looking after him because he was like bipolar, schizophrenia, like, and obviously back then, none of these conditions were common knowledge, you know. So like, him being schizophrenia, I just thought he just spoke to people, or like he just spoke to himself.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that schizophrenia. I was like 16. Like my main focus was, where am I getting money to buy food?
Yeah.
Now there's 3 people in the house. What do I need to do? So I just had to survive.
Yeah.
I survived the best way I could. But because I was always doing and always doing and always doing, I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to sit on my emotions. I discarded a lot of my emotions as well because I felt like they would get in the way from me achieving any type of success. And like, that's the dumbest thing in the world. That's stupid.
It is, yeah.
It's stupid. But as a child, you know, and even I have to sit back and think, I was a child. Like, I wasn't like 30, I lost my mom. Like, I was a child. So for me, like, discarding my emotions was like no different to like throwing some shoes out.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I looked at it. So I did that. And then, yeah, I just had to carry on life. I survived. I did what I needed to do. I looked after my brother. I looked after my uncle. I looked after myself. And yeah, it was hard. Like,
See, what I find interesting, the word survivor, and one of the things that Mum said to me, you know, she left me a lot of voice notes, which I treasure. You know, they kind of, I listen to them when I need to. And in one of the voice notes, it was like coming up to when she was about to pass, and I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I stay here? Do I go to uni? I was in two minds.
Yeah.
And one of the words she used was, she was like, Joe. But yeah, so we were chatting about the word survivor and how, you know, obviously you brought it up, and it's something that I guess when trauma is, you're faced with trauma, you have no choice but to be a survivor, because that's the only style of thinking you have. You know,
Facts.
you know, a lot of subconsciously as a child as well. You know, yes, we might be children, but we pick up on a shitload of stuff, and we may, and it's, I think, why I may have found poetry a lot later in my life. Not later, but at the time you don't realise you pick up on it. And, you know, I think over the years I did see therapists, and I did see people, and I would never talk about what was going on with my mum, and, you know, they would always be like, over the years I've you know, rekindled that relationship, but like not in a therapist kind of way, kind of, and they would always say, you know, you never brought up the elephant in the room, and at the time, I guess, like, it was so normal what was going on at home. I didn't think it wasn't, in my opinion, it just seemed like everyone must have this, surely, you know, surely everyone's mum's.
Your perspective change, like your perspective of life changes.
Yeah.
Like, for me, like, I see life a lot more precious now.
Yeah.
As opposed to like when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, I'll just jump from the stairs. Like, okay, because breaking your neck is like not a thing no more.
Yeah.
You know, so you see life from a different perspective. Like, I cherish life now. Like, I understand the fragility of life. I understand the blessings of life. But what I also get is that you're going to die regardless.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that is really promised to us. So it's what you do in between that really counts. And it took my mum dying, and it took me understanding that I know that I shouldn't suppress my emotions for like 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
For me to come to that place. Poetry brought me into that perspective. Like, for me, the word survival means to live a life without gaining or losing. So with that being said, you're only stagnant. You're not necessarily moving forward, but you're not moving backwards. You're just there, fighting demons, but you're just there. There's no progression with it. But then when you start to open up all of these emotions and these traumas, you start to realize, you know what, there's certain things that I need to figure out, I need to do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, it sucks that it took my mum dying for that to happen. But I also believe that there must have been a reason and a purpose. Like, if my mum was still alive and my dad was still there, I could just be like the biggest dickhead in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. I could be a spoiled brat. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So, like, her death, in essence, gave me life. And that's a really difficult concept to understand, because we don't see death. We see death in the sense of like someone is gone now, I can't get them back. And yes, that's true, but like in the Egyptian culture, they say death is just the beginning. It's like they believe that there's something afterwards. You will meet somebody, you will meet them again afterwards. And like, so for me personally, the way I see my mum's death now is that like it's a sad thing, but there are so many good points that she's left me with. Like even the way I talk to my kids is the way she speaks to me.
Yeah.
And I remember back in the day, I used to hate the way she spoke to me. You sit there like, oh, here we go, this girl talking again. But there was so much truth in what she was saying.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you know, stubborn, thinking you can take on the world, you're not trying to hear adults. You're not trying to hear them. You just want to do stuff and see what happens. But there's so much truth in what she's saying. Like even her parenting techniques, like I've taken them on and I've evolved them. And it's all down to her. Like she's left a legacy, and people don't die until they're forgotten. Do you know what I mean? And I will never forget her.
Yeah.
So in my heart, her physical essence isn't here, but her presence is still within me.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, I think that's incredibly important, because someone, I can't remember what the song was, but it was like, I think it was like Macklemore, and I'm not a big Macklemore fan, but it was something like, it was about glorious, and it was like something like the first time you die 2 times or something. It's like the first time you're buried into the ground, and the second time is the last time like somebody says your name. Or like that's not but the whole point of the line that really stuck with me was like stayed with me was the fact that, you know, you physically dying and is you know one thing, and this is why I've started this, and you know I say to people, I will say mum's name as much as I can and talk about her as much as I can, because I mean I've got her on a t-shirt, for God's sake, because I don't want people to forget who she was, and because you can't people forget, and it's natural, you know, we evolve and things move forward, and you know we're left the only people thinking about might be her family or so, but I as a person and my brother and my family, we as hard as sometimes it is to talk about her, we've kind of found that it is important. And you know recently we've been having a lot more discussions where it's like, oh yeah, mum would say this or like, do you remember the time mum was, I don't know, doing so and so, and that because you're not you're not taking who she was away. Like yes, she might have passed, but when you don't talk about her, or you're afraid to say her name, or you're afraid to even recognise that she was a person, you're kind of ending her for a second time.
Well, you're devaluing who she was to you.
Yeah.
Because also, like, you can talk about this to people, but they won't necessarily understand the value that your mum has to you, because they don't have the same connection. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, when you don't speak about your mum, or you try to, like I did, like suppress for like over 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, I'm devaluing my mum when she was the most influential figure in my childhood.
Yeah.
You know, so if I'm going to stop talking about her, it's like, you know, what am I doing? What am I actually doing? So I find it's a lot more important now to talk about her. Like I even talk to my kids about her. Like my kids never met my mum, because obviously like my oldest boy is 7. You know, my mum died like 16 years ago.
Yeah.
But then I find it important, you know, it's like, this is who this person was. And yeah, you're never going to see her again. You'll see pictures, you'll never see her, but understand who she was, you know. And it is cathartic for me, because I'm getting things off of my chest, you know. And I find that the fact that I've had to be alone for so long, that's very detrimental to me. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out, I don't have to do things by myself.
Yeah.
my girlfriend is a rock. Like, you know, she does things. She's like, oh, like, you coming over? Like, yeah, I want to cook for you. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
When I should be saying thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know
Is
what
it
I'm
because you're
saying?
not used to that?
Yeah, because that, for someone to say, oh, I'm going to cook for you, like, I'd cook for myself.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'd go to work, come home, and I'm the one that's cooking. I'm
Yeah.
the one that's doing everything.
Yeah.
So when someone does something for me, it's like someone's doing something. Like, that's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
It's huge. Whereas to other people, because it doesn't have the same value to other
Yeah.
people, it's just like, I'm only like throwing some stuff in a pan, like, chill out.
Yeah.
Do
But I
you
suppose you've only known independence. You've only known to be the rock and to like you said, survive.
Yeah.
And I think also accepting help and accepting that is also hard. Like when you have had that independence and that's all you know.
It's so hard, man.
Yeah, it's like I'm not like, yes, I'm independent, but not to the same degree as yourself. But there are elements in my life where I do find it hard, and definitely emotionally, I found it hard to ask for help, you know, and that's something I've gradually accepted. That like, I don't know if it's being a man. You know, obviously the male culture of
that plays a part in things.
Definitely having, you know, do I wish that I can, you know, sit down and openly talk to all my friends and not be judged? Yes. I mean, I have amazing friends and I know whatever is discussed would never be judged, but I think there will always, for the time being anyway, still be that occasional stigma, like, you know. But then, you know, I've noticed people are supporting and they are supportive, and that conversation is a lot more present. However, there's still the narrative that, you know, odd, but you know, you now and again see in the Facebook comment section of like you know, old men like 55, like, oh yeah, emotions are for pussies. And
do you know what? It's funny. Like I was listening to Drake. I'm not like the biggest Drake fan.
Yeah.
And then he has a line in one of his old songs where he goes like, I'm hearing all of the jokes. I know that they're trying to push me. I know that showing emotions don't ever mean I'm a pussy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so true.
Yeah.
Like we live in a world where like men aren't supposed to show emotion.
Yeah.
Because emotion is a female trait.
Yeah.
Whereas like, that doesn't make any sense, because if that's the case, then men would be robots, and women would be humans.
Yeah,
you know. But because men are the workers, the doers, the laborers, women at home in the kitchen, like some people still have that mentality.
Yeah,
women should be in the kitchen.
Yeah,
I'm like, for what?
Yeah,
you ain't got no more rooms in your house.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know, men should be outside, like doing what, like chopping trees and chasing squirrels. Like,
but it's not the fucking Stone Age.
Yeah, like that mentality is finished. Like, leave that with Game of Thrones. Like, it's done now. Do you know what I'm saying to you? Like, you're allowed to cry. Men are allowed to cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've said to people, like, you were born into this world crying.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? Crying is an emotion. It's actually it's a mechanism of communication.
Yeah.
All your emotions are mechanisms of communication. So for you to just disregard it, right? It means that you're not talking wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And yes, I've had to lose my mum to understand that. And yes, I've had to suppress my emotions and let them all come out in like bursts and flurries. But like, that's all part of the progress. That's part of the healing journey. Like, I cry now. Like, sometimes I'll wake up and I'll just cry.
Yeah.
And it's rare that it happens, but if it happens, I'll just let it happen.
Yeah.
You know? And I'll stop after a while and I'll be like, okay, what was that all about?
Yeah, yeah. But I think when sometimes that happens to me, and like over the strangest of things, and you know, I recently spoke about this. I don't know if I spoke about it before actually, but I was coming back from Nottingham, because that's where I'm at uni, like a couple of weeks ago, And I was in the car, like I had a really, really like good week, and I was feeling really positive about myself. I was like, you know what, like I'm doing bloody amazing. Like what I'm doing right now is fantastic. And I just started getting really emotional. Like I started crying, and then I just looked at that office. I was like, bloody hell, where did that come from?
Yeah.
But like, I just accepted it. I was like, you know, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I was like really ecstatic with like happiness almost, and I just started getting upset. And I wasn't like not upset. And then I was like, okay, Mum's not here to see it. And then there was that side of it, but it was like, why would you suppress that and tell yourself like stop feeling in that manner and just, like you said, almost be a robot and earn money and you know, and just be like,
just be society's puppet.
yeah, like I just think it's stupid how it's, and you know, now and again, of course, I can talk in this manner, and sometimes I do fall victim to that way of thinking, the sense that, like, you know, when I do enter the workforce, you know, is this something I will talk about? Is, you know, can you know, a man in the workforce still feel comfortable to, like, you know, there are times where I'm thinking, but then I remember, like, you know, this is a part of your life, and you know, you can't, there's no point, because I've been there where I've ignored it and, you know, try to forget that mental health's a thing, or forget my emotions. And you know what that does? That makes you feel 10 times worse, because
100% it does.
it just builds up, and then you're like, yeah, it's...
No, 100%. Like, I've been there, and the way I saw, like after my mum died until about 28, the way I saw it was that, like, I was a cup, and every time, instead of like digesting my emotions and releasing it through my body and understanding it, I would just be filling up this cup of my emotions and filling up, and after a while, once you fill up a cup, it's going to overflow, it's going to spill, right? So because I was kept on filling up this cup, I was taken away, and what my body should be absorbing spiritually, I was taking it away because I was just filling up this cup. And then after a while, it would overflow, and a burst of emotions would come out, and it would be rare. Like, I think that happened maybe like 4 times in like 12 years. It was rare, but it would happen. And then I had to really sit back and go, this is not for me. And even therapy, people have been telling me to go to therapy for years. For years, I'm, oh, no, therapy's not for me. Or, like, you only go to therapy if you're crazy.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's like the 17-year-old me talking.
Yeah.
The 18-year-old, the 19-year-old me talking. But then what I also have to understand is that I didn't learn certain things as a teenager. Therefore, how would I have knowledge of what to do?
Yeah.
If I don't even know what the thing is to then do it. So I had to learn. I had to understand, like, the way the world works, the way I had to operate in the world. And then when I finally went to therapy, it was one of the best things of my life.
Yeah.
Like, I would not be writing poetry if it wasn't for therapy.
Yeah.
Because no one told me to journal.
Yeah.
Nobody told me that. Nobody said journaling was good. The only thing, like, before that, the most I've ever written was my dissertation. And I don't even want to write that. I didn't even want to write that.
Yeah, I feel that.
But it was like, oh, you have to write 20,000 words in like 4 months. And I'm like, I barely wrote that in 5 years of school. Like, what are you talking about, 4 months? So when someone says, yo, write your emotions on a paper, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I had to understand that. Now I do. It's like, everybody should be journaling. Everyone, you know. And from that, with the therapy, understanding myself, certain things that was going on in my life, breaking up with their mum, like, as much as everything happened at once, I didn't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because I was putting it on this paper. It's like I was taking it out of my head and I was making it into something tangible, which is words on a page. And it's easier for me to look at something tangible and be like, okay, let me decipher this. Because I'm looking at a physical object, as opposed to like searching in my brain somewhere for something that I thought like 10 years ago. Like, it's right there. You know, it's manifested itself into something physical. Okay, let me read it again. All right, cool. And now I'm in the zone. Let me tackle it. And I wouldn't be writing poetry if it wasn't for that. And I never started off saying, yeah, I'm going to heal the world. Like,
No.
I barely could heal myself. You know, I just wanted to understand myself more. I wanted to write poetry for me. And I'm still writing poetry for me. Like, I don't write poems for other people. Like, I can't. You know, like, I find it difficult to write to prompts because I'm like, what is this? I can't remember someone said, write about socks. I'm like, why? Like, what has that got to do with anything, you know?
Yeah.
And there are some people you could just give them a way, say bus stop, and they'll write 5 poems about a bus stop. And that's amazing. Like, if you have that power, like, fucking do it.
Good for you.
Yeah, but me, I don't even want to take the bus. So I'm not writing about bus stop. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I have to really feel something. I have to, like, if someone was to say something to me, like, my poetry comes from my feelings now.
Yeah.
And I love that because I didn't have feelings before.
Yeah.
I didn't have any feelings before. I just had movements and action and like no smiles and robotic natures. And now I'm feeling things I've never felt before.
Yeah.
You know? Like even my daughter said something to me the other day and I just had a tear roll down my eye.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe you said that.
Yeah.
I had no reason to cry.
Yeah.
I had no reason to shed a tear whatsoever, but I did. And I just embraced it, you know. And it's embracing those emotions that are important. And it's like, I'm still dealing with my traumas. I'm still understanding who I am as a person. But I'm okay with where I am now.
Yeah.
I'm okay with where I am now because it's okay to not be okay sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to just sit down and go, right, this is where you are.
Yeah.
Live there for a bit, understand it, and then walk out the door, move on. You know, so that's where I'm at right now, and I love it.
It's interesting, well, not interesting, but that's where you are right now. And I did see on your Insta that you were writing something about growth.
Yeah.
What does growth mean to you? What is growth? What are you looking for?
I wouldn't say I'm looking for anything specific because if I was to look for something specific, it means that I'm tailoring my journey towards a certain point.
Yeah.
And that point, in essence, is like the final point, like quote unquote, the final point. Whereas after that could be like an array of things.
Yeah.
But if I see like, you know, like the letter P as the final point, like there's other letters after P. So I'm missing out. So there isn't like a specific ending. Like I just want to move. I want to grow. I wanna elevate spiritually, emotionally, physically, like personally. I wanna gain experiences. You know, I want to tick things off my bucket list.
Yeah.
I want to meet people and that I've never met before. I want to sit down with a bunch of 90-year-olds and understand why half of my problems don't mean shit.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I want to do that. I want to see my kids, like, you know, grow up and, you know, see them manifest in their dreams.
Yeah.
Like, for me, growth is an internal and external process whereby you're always rising the next day. You're always rising. And it's like a bar graph. Like there's certain points that will be higher than others. But at the end of the day, like those bars are always going up and up and up. And it's through experience, it's through knowledge, it's through love, it's through inspiration. Like people say that, you know, if I sit at home, I'm not doing anything in life. And I'm like, well, you are. Like, you're resting. That's important. You're resting, you're relaxing. Like, be a slob for the day. Like, be like, pig out. Don't wash the dishes. Watch Netflix all day. Like, clock Netflix. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do that for the day because you're resting, you're relaxing, you're not thinking about nothing. And then the next day, go tackle your shit. Yeah. Do what you need to do. Yeah. And that's what growth is. Like, it's a constant elevation through living life.
Yeah, I do think that end bit which you said, living life, I think, you know, in order to grow, you need to experience life and you need to gain experience through whatever method or mechanisms that they are, because without those experiences, you won't grow as a person. And that is, to some degree, I mean, you know, definitely it is getting out your comfort zone. For me, I know growth is different, but I pride myself. Well, I don't know if there is that pressure. Maybe sometimes I do put that pressure to constantly go out my comfort zone, and I guess it's not always a good thing. But I have, sometimes I just, I tell myself that I like to challenge myself, and we're here. We have one life, and there's a bit in my heart, if there's something that I'm a bit skeptical, or like, oh, I don't know if I should do that. There's a bit of me just telling you, Joe, you go do that, because even if you like, for example, poetry night or whatever, go live. Yeah, let's say you do fuck up on stage. Well, okay, what happens? You learn that how to handle your nerves. You learn that in order to next time what you're going to do, you learn maybe this isn't for me. But if you don't experience things, and if you're so happy just like kind of being in a little bubble, and for some people maybe that is all they desire, but I definitely desire my bubble to like constantly expand and grow, and that's how I think for me anyway, growth is really kind of generated. But honestly, mate, this has been a really, really lovely chat.
It's been amazing, man.
Yeah, it's
cathartic. I feel
lighter.
lighter.
It's so nice to just sit down and like, you forget that, where we are and all of this. It's just you sit down and it's like, I know very little about you. You know very little about me. We've had but the fact that we're two men and we can talk about this and it's just like normal.
Facts.
And it's just like you said, so cathartic and just really, really nice. But I always like to kind of wrap up these conversations on the same kind of note. And it's, if you were to have a conversation with your mum again, what is it you'd say?
I would say 2 words to her. I'll just tell her thank you. That's all I'd say is thank you. Because I know now within my heart that she gave me everything she could.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, why am I asking for more?
Yeah.
I don't need to. Just thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for living your life. Thank you for giving me the wisdom that you gave me, even though I couldn't see it back then. But thank you for like pushing through my stubbornness. Like that's it. It's just thank you.
Well, thank you for, for joining me today. But wonderful conversation. And if you haven't bought merch, buy it.
I just want you to find your truth and stick to it. I know you'll be okay. I know it. From the bottom of my heart, I know it. I love you, Baba.